going back a little bit to your first answer, you say that the purpose of the book as well was understanding the true nature of Rahu. So in your words, and for my listeners, what is the true nature of Rahu?
True nature of Rahu is something that can vary from person to person. What I perceive Rahu as can be different from what the other person perceive Rahu as. What I have mentioned in my book is my perception about Rahu and how you can overcome Rahu by understanding the significance of meditation.
Okay, the significance of meditation. And I like the whole premise that the entire book is laid upon, which is you need to overcome Rahu. It's something that you need to kind of survive or superate or overcome. Very, very interesting title. Why that title? Why how to overcome Rahu?
Because unless you overcome your desire, you cannot actually find peace. Rahu itself is the desire. Rahu drives you into more having, it makes you more desirous.
Mm-hmm. You actually say in your book that is the solid reason why we reincarnate. That's what you say in your book. Is the reason why we reincarnate, Rahu. Is that true?
Now, can you repeat what I didn't?
Oh, sorry, that you say in your book that Rahu is the reason why we reincarnate and why we come back to this reality.
Yes,
why? Okay.
that is true. Because the whole human birth, the source of human birth is your desire. You are born because there is a desire that has to be fulfilled. This desire is what your Rahu is in your birth chart. So the birth and the rebirth cycle happens through desire, which is Rahu.
Okay. So one of the things that you say in your book as well is that there is actually no good position for Rahu. You describe Rahu as a demonic energy, and you give an explanation for it. This kind of really grabbed my attention. Can you describe for us why is Rahu a demonic energy? I understand the myth behind, but if you can repeat it, please, for us, and what is your personal perception about it?
The simple reason for this demonic or this kind of, which I have mentioned, is basically because Rahu brings ambition. Ambition drives you crazy, right? The more you become ambitious, the more you are running and running and running. Everybody knows what happened with Hitler or with any dictator. If you see, every dictator has been a demonic person or has eventually become demonic because of his unending ambition. This ambition is what Rahu brings. And because of this, you become demonic, or basically you lose your control and you just keep running.
Okay. And something that really grabbed my attention as well, kind of following that idea, is that you say that there is no good placement for Rahu. You talk about, Rahu in the 6th house and exalted and all of these, but literally, well, not literally, I'm paraphrasing, to say something like, oh, don't kid yourself. That let's not kid ourselves, and let's believe that there is a good placement for Rahu, because there is not. So can you explain more about that? That was like a very interesting perspective, that Rahu is not exalted in sixth
Yes.
house.
So when I mentioned this, I mentioned it from a spiritual perspective for a spiritual person, because as long as there is desire, you are still in the grip of this worldly affairs. The transition from desire to desirelessness, which is Ketu, just to make it more clear, Bhagwan Raman Maharshi has specifically mentioned that Maya is desire, or to put it, illusion. Desire is an illusion, and God is desirelessness. So the transition from Rahu to Ketu, and that is what I have mentioned in the book, that the whole cycle of birth and rebirth happens through this Rahu and Ketu. As long as you are having certain desires, you will continue to be in the circle of Rahu. That is why any saint or any enlightened being is in the state of desirelessness. That is Ketu. So
Yeah.
when I mentioned that Rahu is in reality, Rahu has no place or no good place in the horoscope. It is more for a person who is meditating or who is on the spiritual path.
Okay.
For a person who is still at the base level, where he still is desiring certain things. It can be power, it can be pleasures, it can be anything. For such a person, then we can give certain houses where Rahu can do well. But that is on a different level. I have written on a level which is related to spiritual path. That for a person on a spiritual path, for him, Rahu anywhere is not there is no specific place where you can say that this place is good for Rahu. For somebody who is on the spiritual path.
Okay. I did notice that. You talk about Ketu in very favorable and very good terms, but because you are analyzing Ketu from the spiritual perspective, and that's actually something that you say that is the favorite of people who is in the lightening or who is in the spiritual path. So that's very interesting. And you also say that if Rahu causes any trouble, is the trouble of our own making. That's very interesting. And we should not blame Rahu. We should not blame the planets. Would you talk about that?
Yes. Because Rahu or Ketu, these are the entities that we have identified as. But whatever actions you do, whatever like the nature of clinging, the nature of attachment, the nature that I want more and more and more, the feeling of being dissatisfied in spite of having everything that one could wish for. So all these things, that signifies the placement of Rahu.
Yes. Our own attachments. And how then do you guide someone with a strong placement Rahu, let's say Rahu conjunct the moon, how do you guide as an astrologer someone with Rahu moon in his or her chart? Can you do
Rahu,
it? Is the question.
uh,
Can you do it? Is the question. Can you actually guide and give advice and counseling someone with Rahu moon?
I have seen most of the men and women having a Rahu moon conjunction. They find a lot of interest in spirituality.
Wow.
But the difference is that they are just interested. They are interested and their intention is different from what the intention a moon Ketu person will have. Now, how? Their intention or their interest is to attain something through the path, to attain something, some power, some supernatural power, through which they can attain more fame, through which they can become more famous. Because that ambition, I am somebody or I want to be somebody, is the nature of Rahu.
Okay.
So this, I have seen many men and women having moon and Rahu conjunction, having a lot of interest in this, in occultism, because then again there is a difference between occultism and spirituality.
Yes. And in fact, you dedicate a big portion of your book talking about Rahu and its relation with black magic. And that's very interesting, because not many people, not many astrologers talk about black magic and how to see black magic in someone's chart, and not only someone to see the signs of someone doing it, but being victim of it. So I would like that you talk about that, if you want, about the relationship between Rahu and black magic.
The whole essence of Rahu is this, that it brings ignorance. And the second point is that it is not willing to let go. So when you are dealing with a Rahuish person, or if the person is having a strong Rahu, or he or she is Rahuish, then they definitely will not forgive you, will not let go. And then they are dragged or they are attracted toward this dark world of black magic. Because this way or that way, by hook or by crook, they want to attain their goal. And because of this, Rahu, or person under the influence of Rahu, a person going through Rahu Mahadasha, I have seen that many of them are either suffering because of black magic, or they are completely in that anger of casting black magic on their enemy. So you cannot stop them unless they are willing to.
Okay.
Whereas the nature of Ketu is to let go. He or she will say, okay, fine, I will let go. So if you are letting go, then there is no question of going anywhere or doing anything on anybody.
Okay.
And that is why Rahu, and you should understand that Rahu is again, who is the guru of Rahu? Mercury. Mercury, and Mercury is related again with air. All the black magic spells work through the air. So Rahu is closely connected with black magic, especially if you have Rahu in the 8th house, Rahu in the 12th house, or Rahu in the 6th house. Then definitely in your life, either this way or that way, you come in contact with black magic. Either you become a victim, or either you indulge in doing black magic on somebody.
What about the aspects of Rahu? Do you use the aspects of Rahu in Ketu as the aspects of aspects of Jupiter, looking to the 5th house of himself, the opposition, and 9th house of himself?
Yes, if Jupiter's aspect is on Ketu, if Jupiter's 5th aspect or 7th aspect or 9th aspect is on Ketu or on Rahu, then the intensity is toned down. Then the negative result of Rahu is scaled down. Why? Because Jupiter brings a certain level of awareness.
Yeah, I noticed that you were very against the negative notion of Guru Chandal Yoga. You were like, 1 second, these people who say that Guru Chandal Yoga is maybe wrong. And this was the first time that I heard this perspective, which kind of was very interesting, that you actually were advocating and saying maybe it's not that bad. Could you explain about this position of Jupiter and Rahu in conjunction?
Jupiter and Rahu conjunction, it is not as dreadful as it is made out to be.
Yes.
There are many successful people having this Jupiter and Rahu conjunction, or Jupiter with Rahu. So it is not that it is completely, you are completely outcasted because of this yoga.
Okay.
It all depends on the other side of the chart, where exactly the placement is, who is the ascendant sign, the in which sign this conjunction is happening. So there are so many minute things that we cannot just generalize that Guru Rahu is completely bad.
Do the significations of Jupiter suffer? For example, do a person with Guru Chandal Yoga, does she or him will have maybe bad relationships with gurus or institutions, or what do you think?
No, nothing like that.
Okay.
Nothing like that happens. There is no bad relation with teacher or with the seniors or with the gurus, or nothing like that. The only problem here is that there can be a case where the person can become a fake Baba.
Okay.
You see, or in the sense of fake saint. That is a possibility in rare cases. But apart from that, because here what is happening is because of Jupiter is getting afflicted by Rahu, and if the overall quality of the horoscope is not that great, then there is a slight possibility that fakeness can be there. But apart from that, this conjunction is not at all dreadful as it is made out to be.
Oh, that's very important. I think I'm just invited to you say that because there is an entire industry about remedies and how to deal with Guru Chandal Yoga. And I have a very, I was actually speaking with this very young woman, and she told me that an astrologer told her that she may not get married because Jupiter was the husband and was afflicted by Rahu. And I think that was the only reason why she got this diagnosis, the no marriage for you. And she came to me and she was very, very scared. And well, yeah, so that's the reason why I shared your book with her as well. I was like,
Okay.
listen, read this book. It's not that dreadful as it is
Yes.
say that it is, and just learn a little bit about it. Her Jupiter was in a very, very strong position when it's actually exalted in Cancer. So I don't know why this astrologer told her that, but it can cause fear, that's for sure. One of the things I was going to ask you was, you say in your book that whatever Rahu brings, Rahu takes away. That's one of the phrases that you use.
Yes.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Because Rahu is Maya. Rahu is illusion. So illusion doesn't stay for long. A time comes during Rahu Mahadasha where people have got a lot of fame and a lot of money. By the time Rahu Mahadasha ends, they have lost everything.
Mhm.
So this is just a bubble. Rahu result is just like a bubble. It stays for just a limited time frame, after which you are again back to zero.
Hmm. And so your advice for people in this dasha is always, according to your book, to don't get attached to whatever Rahu gives them.
Yes.
So that's the basic advice for people in Rahu dasha. Just don't get attached to anything you get
Yes.
during. Mhm.
Because the nature of Rahu is clinging. And during Rahu Mahadasha, when you receive all this money and fame, then you slowly move away from yourself. You become totally extrovert. Your whole attention is on what is happening outside. So this whole 18 years of Rahu Mahadasha, let's say even if you earn money and fame, still you have become spiritually poor. And in the end, what happens? Whatever you have gained, even that goes away.
Mm.
So then you become totally beggar from outside and at the same from inside. Because 18 years of Rahu Mahadasha, you never paid attention of turning inwards. Because you are lost in all that glamour.
Mm.
And that glamour doesn't stay for long. I have seen people who have had so many people around them with cameras. As soon as Rahu Mahadasha ended, everything went away. They lost their job. They lost their position.
Mm.
So this is how Rahu Mahadasha actually, traps you in this whole illusion where you are totally at loss. So a person who says that I have gained a lot of money in Rahu Mahadasha, in reality, he has actually lost that precious time of turning inwards, understanding himself. introspection, all this thing is lost. And the money that he has gained, that also someday goes away.
So do you think it's possible for someone with living the Rahu Mahadasha to learn, for example, Vedic astrology and all these concepts? Is it because that is something very interesting that you say as well. You say that Rahu is being obsessed with intellectualism and Ketu is more driven towards intelligence. And I thought it was quite a very succinct, essential difference. So I guess when I read that, I assume that people who is in Rahu Mahadasha and is learning astrology, they may learn it from other perspective, more intellectually maybe, more superficially maybe, or with maybe an objective in mind. Meanwhile, people who is in Ketu Mahadasha understand and assimilate profoundly the concepts.
Yes. To self-realize, he or she will learn when going through Ketu Mahadasha.
Is there anything that someone in Rahu Mahadasha can do to understand astrology deeply, even if they are in Rahu time, Rahu transit, for example?
Yes, astrology can definitely help when you are going through Rahu Mahadasha, especially when you are learning astrology while going through Rahu Mahadasha. Definitely it can help because you understand where exactly you are going wrong, what exactly you should be doing and what you should not be doing.
So many times astrology helps.
Yes, many times what happens is that during Rahu Dasha or during certain Rahu transits, there are certain temptations. So many times the awareness of the person is there, but still that temptation drives him or her. When you learn astrology, you understand that why you are getting tempted, why this temptation is coming. You get a reason. And the human mind is such that once you find some reason, then you start feeling lighter. You start feeling better.
Yeah. Do you agree with the people who say that Rahu is the karaka of astrology?
Is what?
Is the karaka of astrology, the significator of astrology, that Rahu rules astrology? Do you agree with that?
No, not at all. For the simple reason.
Go ahead.
For the simple reason is because astrology is the light of consciousness. Jyotish, right? It is a jyot, light of self, self-awareness. That is what astrology is. So you tell me, how can Rahu be connected with astrology when Rahu is total darkness? Rahu is total ignorance. Astrology is the source of light. It is the sun. If you say sun is related with astrology, I can understand. But Rahu is darkness. How can darkness signify, or as you are saying, what you are saying, karakatva? How can Rahu signify astrology? That is not possible. This statement that Rahu signify astrology is done by Rahuish people.
I have seen so many articles and actually people asking me, like, do you believe that? And I'm like, well, Jyotisha, and Jyotish is the science of light, and you know, Jyotish is ruled by the sun, and the sun is the enemy of Rahu. How can we?
Yes.
How can we say that Rahu rules Jyotish? And another thing that I was going to ask you is, do you believe? So basically, again, I'm inviting you to my channel to talk about this because we are kind of clarifying many misconceptions that I see around, and I think you are the person to go to. And another misconception that I have seen around is the exaltation and debilitation of Rahu. Can you talk to us about what signs are the exaltation of Rahu, and if you believe that Rahu has exaltation or not?
Exaltation of Rahu, I believe, is in the sign of Gemini. And exaltation of Ketu is in the sign of Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The sign of Gemini is the sign of Mercury. Mercury is completely connected with intellectualism. And the other side, that is in Sagittarius, it is Jupiter. So there is no intellectuality, there is intelligence. Now, what is intelligence? Intelligence is when the heart is in tune with the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is when intelligence is born. Whereas intellectualism is totally logic. There is no role of heart in intellectualism. That is why Albert Einstein has mentioned that logic can take you from A to Z. But beyond Z, it is only imagination that can take. So basically, logic, eventually what happens? Logic locks you. You start suffocating because you are totally into your head. Even when it comes to astrology, if you are completely only focusing on the calculations, then you will not find the essence of the subject.
Okay.
So unless heart comes into the picture, unless you start listening to the voice of your heart, the essence of astrology cannot be realized. My emphasis is on that don't just rely on the scriptures. Don't just rely on what has been written about certain yoga or certain conjunctions. See the facts through your own experiences.
Now that you say that, I wanted to ask you something. When you say see the facts from your own experience, do you think that Rahu has to do with imitation, stealing someone's work, for example, and not assimilating the concepts by yourself? Because, you know, I believe that Ketu has to do a lot with our past talents and how we access to our inner knowledge, that Ketu. But when we are not accessing to our inner knowledge, but we are kind of imitating people, copying people, stealing others' work. Well, I know stealing has to do with Rahu, but do you believe that copying people has to do with Rahu? Copying people's work?
Anything that is not ethical comes under Rahu. Because the whole story of Rahu, as per the mythology, is that Rahu took the, Rahu sat in with the Devatas. He basically, he was Asura, but he tried to show himself as a Sura, that is a Devata. So that nature itself is of Rahu. So whether it is stealing, copying, or whether it is, faking, all these things obviously comes under the regime of Rahu.
Okay, so the karma with copying, when someone copy us, has to do with Rahu as well. When someone get our work. And I just ask you because, you know, this is happening a lot. And I understand that technology is Rahu as well. You know, technology has to do with Rahu. And when you have all your work, you know, you have your electronic and your ebooks out there. You have a podcast, you work with these platforms, and probably you have some experiences as well about this, people stealing your work or taking your ideas. Do you think that has to do as well with our karma with Rahu?
Yes. But as they say that somebody can copy you. Let's take example. Somebody can copy you. But the source through which you are getting the ideas, that nobody can take away from you. You see?
You're totally right. That's right. You talk a lot as well about the effects of Rahu aspecting or imposition in the seventh house, maybe aspect in the seventh house. And this is something that I see a lot as well, maybe in opposition of the moon, it could be, and in seventh house in Navamsha. What are the effects of Rahu on the marital life, in married life? You have an entire chapter about this. It's very interesting. And I really love this story about the young woman that comes to your office and tells you, I want to have a husband. And then you see her chart and she has Rahu in the seventh house. And she's like, I want to have a husband, but I want to have a husband because I want to have I want to have children. I want to have a stability. And then you say, of course, she wants to have something, get something from that relationship because there's Rahu in the seventh house. And I really love that story. So having Rahu in seventh house makes us interested in ulterior motives. Is that what I understand from your chapter? Or makes us very selfish? That's what I understood from the chapter. Rahu in the seventh house.
Rahu in the seventh house is all about others. So every time the person is focused on the others, and who is the closest other in your life? It can be either your girlfriend, boyfriend, or it can be your husband or wife. So the constant focus on the other, that is your partner. The first other is your partner. That constant focus can become an obsession. So the partner may start feeling suffocated. This is one aspect. The other aspect is that because the focus is always on the other, and seventh house is connected with the opposite sex, so the person is more interested in opposite sex. So then he or she may start looking for more other suitable, love interests.
Okay.
That is why extramarital cases or being obsessed with the partner, these kind of things usually happen when Rahu in the seventh house.
Okay. Does that have the same effect when it's in the Lagna aspect in the seventh house?
Which house?
When Rahu is in the Lagna aspect in the seventh house, is kind of the same or has a different connotation?
No, then the person is concerned about myself. About my body, how do I look, whether I am fit and whether I am in shape. The whole focus is on me now. So this Rahu makes you self-centered. It's all about me. And when Rahu is in the seventh, it's all about him or her. It's all about the other person.
Okay. I have seen a lot of Rahu in the first house, especially in Aries athletes and people who really devotes their time to perfect their body.
Yes.
Rahu in Aries in the first house. And I really love how you give remedies as well for this kind of effects in married life. And you say you need to let go of the expectations with your partner. Is there any other remedy for people who have Ketu Rahu in the first seventh house?
The remedy for Rahu in the seventh is, there is just this one point, that you have to see that your attachment or your obsession with your partner, you have to take that effort to reduce, to scale down this kind of attachment or this kind of too much interest in the opposite sex, because all these things finally drive you into more miseries.
Okay. In your perspective, in your opinion, is there any nakshatra that favors the results of Rahu and that turns it into a less demonic position? Any nakshatra that is more favorable?
Every nakshatra in which Rahu falls, the desire manifests through the energy of that nakshatra. So, and as now I am covering the series of Rahu in all nakshatras, so as I have been covering almost now 12 nakshatras through which Rahu has been through, I can see that through every nakshatra, Rahu manifests, that is, the desire manifests through the quality and energy of that nakshatra. So there is no as such nakshatra which is good or bad for Rahu. It is simple. Rahu has come to fulfill his desire, and that desire will be manifested through the energy and quality of that nakshatra.
Okay. Is there any nakshatra that is an indicator for you as an astrologer of, for example, black magic? Rahu in that nakshatra can give black magic.
Nakshatra is not more significant. The house placement, connection with the moon, and the placement of Rahu in the moon chart. These aspects are more important to understand whether the person is or will go into the black magic domain.
Okay. Is there any remedy for people who have been in the, let's say, in the dasha Rahu and have succumbed and have fallen into the trap of black magic, and now they look back and they're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe there was in the dasha of Rahu, and now they want to progress in life and be more spiritual. Is there any remedy that you recommend for those past actions during Rahu Dasha regarding black magic?
No, as you understand your mistake, you start, rectifying those mistakes. So just yesterday, I came across a person going through Rahu Mahadesha. So certain people told him to go to certain magicians. So he went to those magicians. but he spent a lot of money also, but there was no result. So the essence of the story is this, that when you are going through Rahu Mahadasha, you should try to control your mind and you should not become a victim, by going to this kind of magicians or here or there, because as time pass by, as your stars change, as the transit change, slowly you will start feeling good. But what people do is that because of Rahu Mahadasha, the fear factor works so much that they make their life more miserable than it already is.
Okay. In your book as well, you talk about the transit of Rahu and Ketu, and I was going to ask you, what are the effects of the transit of Rahu and Ketu? Of course, the return, we kind of understand the return of the nodes, but what happened when Ketu is transiting over your Rahu and Rahu over your Ketu? Is that a difficult transit? What this transit signifies in Vedic astrology?
When Rahu is transiting through Ketu and Ketu is transiting through Rahu, then there is a churning happening in the life. So it's like that year of 18, that 1.5 year or around 18 months of this transit, there will be a lot of churning in your life, in the sense a lot of events will happen in your life.
Okay.
Which will move you, from inside out. So it's like a shake-up.
Okay. I get it. You have it in your chapter as a cosmic serpent biting itself. Is basically the question that you talk about in your chapter. That's very interesting. I think we cover most of the things I was going to ask you. Anything that you want to tell us about this book, how to approach this book, how to use this book, who is written for this book?
This book is specifically for those who want to know about Rahu and who want to basically understand the inner, the true essence, in the sense from spiritual perspective, the true essence of Rahu, that is desire. Because once you understand the problem, then solution can be easily found. Albert Einstein has mentioned that if there is a problem, then I will spend 99% of my time in identifying the problem. What is the problem? I'll spend almost 99% of my time in identifying the problem. So once you are able to identify the problem, then it doesn't take much time. That is why he says then there is only 1% of time is required to solve the problem. This book is basically to help the readers to understand this problem called Rahu. Once they understand this problem, then on their own they will start understanding on what to do to overcome Rahu.
Is it possible though? Is it possible to overcome Rahu? Even if you already that you are in Rahu time, you understand your Rahu, you understand the position of Rahu, the aspects, what it's doing in your chart. Is it possible to actually overcome it?
Yes, that possibility is in the 1%. Because as I say, 99% of your destiny is fixed.
Ah,
But God has been kind enough to spare 1%. This 1% is where your consciousness can work, where through your consciousness you can change the situation. So this book of Rahu is basically to help you become aware, become conscious. Once you become conscious, then you are going to overcome it.
okay. That was very, very generous of you to share with us all of these fascinating ideas. And again, I have been recommending your book to everyone, and we hope to see it soon in Spanish, probably. We hope so. And thank you so much for being with me.
And I just want to mention that it is through desire that you do karma.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The desire pushes you and you act. This act is your karma. This karma is then signified by Saturn.
Yeah.
And so next month, my new book on Saturn is coming. That is Saturn Demystified Spiritually.
Wow. That's great.
So I will request you and all your subscribers, followers to read this book. Next month, once it comes, I will be sharing more details about it on my channel as well.
That's very generous. Thank you so much, Additya.
And so that's it. Rarely do I find such intelligent readers who can resonate, who can relate with my sharing. I thank the interviewer. God bless her. Generally, I accept those who have read my books because it becomes easier since they have already resonated, since they have been able to relate with my sharings, with my books. So I generally don't reject them. I accept them. It reminds me of a beautiful story. Once it happened. Buddha arrived in a village and the whole village was waiting. And as Buddha came, they all became very happy. And now they were waiting for Buddha to begin his discourse. But Buddha remained silent. After a few minutes, the villagers asked, "Why are you not speaking? For whom are you waiting?" And Buddha said, "I am waiting for a little girl. While coming to this village, on the way, I met her. And she said that I will come. But until I come, you please don't start with your discourse. Because I have been waiting for you for many, many years. I am waiting for that little girl." And it is said that Buddha waited. He waited for many hours. And finally the little girl came. And then Buddha started with his discourse. And when the discourse was over, all the villagers went back to their home. But only that little girl came to Buddha and said, "Now initiate me. I want to be your disciple. I want to be with you. Because from the day I have came to know about you, I have always been wanting to meet you. I always had this wish that I want to meet you. And now I cannot leave you. I want to be with you." And Buddha says, "The road is long and I am getting old. I cannot let you come with me, but always remember, I am with you. Even though I am not with you in physical form, I am always with you. On that night, when Buddha was about to sleep, Ananda came and asked, "How do you decide your journeys?" And Buddha said, "I never plan my journeys. My legs start moving towards those who are thirsty for my love, who are thirsty for my words. That is how I decide my journeys." And that is how the master decides his journey, my fellows. Your head can never let you meet the master. Your head and your logic is ugly. The master seeks only your heart, because your heart is beautiful. Your heart knows the language of silence. Real communication happens in silence. Love to all my readers who have read this book, How to Overcome Rahu. And as this year is ending, I want to share a good news that next year, in the month of March, I will be coming back with a new book on Rahu. So till then, you all stay connected with your heart, because the master seeks your heart, not your mind, not your head, and not your logic. Jai Sri Ganesha, Jai Guru. ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः।